Welcome to Machine Builder Talk, the podcast where we dive deep into the world of automation, engineering, and the craft of building machines. Whether you're a seasoned automation pro or just starting your journey, you're in the right place to connect, learn, and get inspired. My name is Colin, and I'm your host, so let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of Machine Builder Talk. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome our very first Canadian guest on the show. I first met Laurie Russell back in 2019 when she joined us for an unforgettable trip to the Hanover Fair in Germany. Even before then, she was making waves as a top controls engineer and is now the leader of the electrical group at Convergex in London, Ontario. In my experience, Laurie always brings some fresh insight into the world of automation and controls. So it's an absolute pleasure to have her join me on the show today. Laurie, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Colin. Pleasure to be here.
So Laurie, tell us a little bit about yourself. Let's get the listeners in there and tell us a little bit about how you got started in the industry, because we all started from a different place. So where did you start? How did you get into the controls and automation industry?
I guess I'll start really far back. In grade 9, I was part of the very first year they had de-streaming in grade 9, which meant everybody tried everything, including every single shop. You got to spend a couple weeks in each shop in high school. And I think, well, I know, had de-streaming not been there, I might not have tried shops. But it turned out I really like them. I like the hands-on side of things. So I ended up, and especially when it came to designing, so I ended up doing some electronics and drafting all the way through grade 12. So when it came time for graduation and going on to post-secondary, I was interested in both engineering, but then also kinesiology, believe it or not.
Really?
So yeah, fascinated with the human body and human, physical activity. So I had applied to both and got accepted to both. So then I needed to make a decision. I went for tours of different schools, but I went for a tour of Conestoga College, and it was a fairly new program. They had the robotics and automation program there. But the fact it was hands-on, it was a co-op program. You went sort of to school year round with the co-ops in there, really appealed to me. So that's where I went. 2 of my co-ops while I was there, I did at D&D Automation, which was in Stratford. And then the third one I did at Keltor Controls, which was in Kitchener.
Yeah.
So then after graduation, went to D&D Automation and stayed there for 17 years. And then it was, I guess, 6 years ago, I transitioned from D&D over to JMP. And so I've been at JMP for 6 years now. We've just been rebranded to Convergex. So that sort of gets you to where I am at today.
Right. Yeah, I remember meeting you when you were at DD Automation in Stratford. I didn't know you were there for 17 years, though. You don't look old enough
Yes.
to have been there for 17 years.
Yeah, I started when I was 5. Let's put it that way.
There you go. Perfect. So it was really your shop experience that got you interested in, well, helped you discover that you liked using your hands and you liked the idea of doing something that was more practical as opposed to accounting or something that was more, what's the word I'm looking for? Mental.
Theoretical, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
theoretical, not mental. That
Yeah.
wouldn't be the right word, but yeah. And so you at that time would have been surrounded by males at the same time. I mean, were you the only female in that class, or were you with other females in that class?
I'm going to say in some of the high school classes, yes, I was the only female in some of them. Other ones, it was like called a communications class where you got to do a bit of designing, but then there was also some video editing and stuff like that. So there was a mix of girls in that one. Once I got to college, there were 3 or 4 girls when I started. Only 2 graduated when I was done. Then going to D&D, sure, there were some females, let's say, in the front office, but when it came to actual part of the engineering group, I would be the only female. Some programmers would come and go, but I was the only constant or consistent one when I was at D&D. Now that I'm at I'm the only one in the electrical group. There is a female in the mechanical group, and then there's a female in the controls group. So slowly you're starting to see more females out there, but by no means is it 50-50 yet.
I see that in the industry as well. And the female portion of our industry is mainly on the marketing side of things, the administration side, and very, very few women, unfortunately, at this point in time. Hopefully, this will change on the engineering side. I mean, 30 years ago, Laurie, there was hardly any females or women in the engineering side of things, especially at the plant level. If you went into the manufacturing side, it was near enough impossible to find a woman in a role at that time.
Mhm.
The OEMs, machine builders themselves, have been a bit more, I guess, proactive on trying to recruit women into the industry. And I guess that's where you got your co-op opportunity, was with a machine builder that was open to having women on their team. And
Mhm.
in all honesty, if anything, I think women bring a completely different perspective to some of the problems we all face in the industry. And a combination of both male and female on a project is a really good combination to get the best answers and the best ideas, concepts shared. Can you speak about some of your experiences of working in a very male dominated industry and how that's maybe held you back, or maybe you haven't been given opportunities that would have been given to you if you were male? Do you have any of those things to share?
There's always a couple instances that stick out in my mind. It was back doing a commissioning on a project on site. Essentially, we were setting up an entire weld cell line that would build the frame for the F-150 trucks. But
Right.
we were setting it up in a warehouse in Oakville just to do
Yep.
all your pre-testing before it would ship and go to site. I was the only female in there. There's tons of people because you have electricians, millwrights, us controls people, but essentially you need to work with those trades. And I specifically remember whether it was, I forget, an electrician or something, standing there trying to have a discussion and or give direction on what needed to be done. And the male I was dealing with would not look me in the eye, but he would look at the co-op boy standing beside me and have the conversation with him. Inside, it would just eat me up, but I'm the kind of person who's not confrontational. I didn't point it out, I didn't bring it up. It just pushes me to, I guess, do my job even better. And over time, let's say a span of the week, that electrician realizes, holy crap, she's the one with the answers and I need to go to. So now I need to start dealing with her. So that's sort of my motive, I guess, is, show them you know your stuff, you can do the work, you can get them the answers, and they'll learn quickly enough that, okay, she knows what she's doing.
So in some ways, that kind of behavior from the males you were working with kind of drove you to work harder and prove yourself, right? So it actually made you
Oh, for
stand.
sure.
So in some ways, that could have helped you propel your career a little bit more that you might not have done. I don't, it's hard to determine if you would if you were male, but because you've had the challenges, and especially someone not looking you in the eyes when they're talking to you because for whatever reason they had they had a problem. Okay, but it could have actually helped you in your career as well, and that gave you that determination, that drive to succeed and prove those people wrong. Right? I'm just curious if that particular gentleman, if we can call him that, came around and appreciated you by the end of that project and kind of changed his way of thinking a little bit.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I don't know if he ever even realized he was doing it initially. He never apologized for doing that, but yeah, definitely towards the end of the project, we were a great team working together, right? So yeah, but unfortunately, with so few females in the industry, that feeling of needing to perform is always there to
Right.
prove that you belong. It's something that is I'm just used to. That's what I do. Maybe it's partly, I guess, who I am. I always wanting to prove myself, but definitely in this industry with the sort of flip-flop ratio of male to females, unfortunately, there is that constant pressure to prove that you belong there.
Right, and that's not just only on your actual skill set side, actually doing your job, but there is this other times where you're maybe in a lunchroom or there are activities arranged by some colleagues at a male, and they might have something like, oh, we're doing a football game or something, we're going to watch a football game, and they might just exclude you because they might think you're not interested in watching football. Would that be a correct assumption, those kind of situations?
I haven't ran into that. At least D&D and Convergex have been very good with, invites to everyone. And I'm more of a sports freak. So I'll go out and watch football or, people will organize a pickup hockey game. I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll join in. Yes, I'll be
Yeah.
the only girl there, but I'll join in. So yeah, I guess I'm sort of pushing the norm on that side of the non-work related side of things as well.
I would call it a trailblazer, Laurie. I think you're a trailblazer and an inspiration for any young ladies out there who are thinking about coming into the automation industry. Laurie really is an inspiration for that. So on that note, what is a little bit of advice that you could give to some young ladies that may be looking at coming into the industry, or probably not even thinking about coming into the industry, because I think most of us don't even realize there's an automation industry when we join it, but being practical and doing something with their hands with skills, as opposed to, following the modern day route of sending your kids to university, getting them a degree, and then most of the time, half of them don't know what to do with it afterwards. But what would be one little bit of advice that you could give to a young lady, let's say like yourself, when you were younger, that was practical and really enjoyed the hands-on approach to, maybe get into the industry or open doors?
Yeah, I've done a couple sort of speaking engagements for young girls, essentially when they're going into high school. My old high school teacher would always bring in a whole group of girls, and so we'll do a little talk and I'll show them what I do as a living. And then I've done different things at the high school level as well. But my main message to them is what I do, I don't need to be a big, bulky, you know, super strong person.
Right.
I'm using my brain, and it doesn't matter if you're a guy or a girl, you can use your brain. So if it's something that enjoys you, and what I do, there's a lot of problem solving, which I really enjoy doing. Yeah, it's open to anyone who's interested.
Yeah, and I can say you'll never have a boring day in your life working in the automation industry. That's something, I can personally, recommend, is that you come to work and it's different every day, and you get to see some really cool things, right?
Cool stuff. Yeah.
All
And
right.
to be
So
able to say, hey, whether it's a car or some sort of product, like I had a hand in making that, it's a pretty cool feeling.
it is actually, isn't it? You can say I was involved with that being made, and the show How It's Made.
It's
My
made,
kids,
yeah.
my kids, and they're all girls, by the way. So I've got three girls, hence the female angle there. They were really interested in watching that show, and I was like, oh, that's what I see every single day. It's and explaining to them how it worked and what was going on there. It was a lot of fun. And unfortunately, none of my girls got into the practical side of things, and so. But they certainly enjoyed watching the automation and me talking about it, I guess, and robots and stuff like that when they were younger. So, out of your career so far, what would you say was one of the most pivotal moments that, shaped your career and put you where you are today?
Well, I guess first just getting into the industry, so deciding to go the engineering route was very pivotal for me. And then having two awesome co-op experiences. D&D was very good at letting you get your hands dirty on day one, so getting lots of job experience. So that helped guide me and decide sort of what part of the field I wanted to go in. A pivotal moment, I was in a very bad car accident back in 2002. So it damaged my legs a lot. So my days of spending time on the floor commissioning. Oftentimes you're standing on cement floors for 12, 14-hour days. Those days were gone. So that sort of pushed me over to the electrical design because I didn't need to be on the floor as much. I still do a little bit, but that pushed me that route, which actually turned out to be awesome because this career that I have right now has allowed me to become a mom and juggle, a home life as well as work life. So, yeah.
Right. And I can guess that your practical electrical experience on the floor was really invaluable when it came to design.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah, the things that you learn on site and you learn on the floor, then you can go back and put those lessons learned into your designs for the next time, for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good concept to bring in young designers and give them some time on the floor, actually assembling, installing, pulling cables, connecting devices, programming them a little bit, just for a little bit of time so they can actually experience what happens on the other side when it leaves their computer or their CAD program. And someone's actually got to install it at the other end because it gives them some insight into some of the challenges you have on site, especially when it's 1 o'clock in the morning and you're trying to do your first runoff and those times
Yep.
that I wish that someone had designed this a little bit differently, right? So
Yeah.
yeah. So you've been doing this for a while now. We're not going to get into how long you've been doing it, but you said 17 years and 6 years and co-op on top of that. So getting close to, well, probably 25 years now, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. What keeps you excited today? What motivates you to keep going and, makes you go to work every day?
Go to work. So, yeah, I really love my job. The fact that, as I said, I enjoy the problem solving aspect of things. But for us, every job is different. We might have some repeat machines, but there's all, let's say, different flavors to them. But then we also deal with different industries, different customers. Convergex sort of prides themselves on first of a kind, so challenges that have never been automated before, we will try and tackle them. So that problem solving thing is very exciting for me. But then also, there's always new technology. Everything is always changing and developing. And so you want to stay on top of that, or you want to know what that next device is, or the newest technology that they're coming out with that might make your life easier, might make the product that you're giving to the customer more modular or easy to commission. So yeah, the fact that that's constantly evolving, every day is different. And then the people that I work with, I enjoy all the people I work with. They're, very similar to me, similar backgrounds, similar interests. So yeah, we have fun at work. It's a good environment to be in.
And that probably is a good time to go into tell us a little bit about what Convergix specializes in and what kind of business they're in the automation industry.
Okay. I'll have to sort of do 30,000-foot view and then work my way down. It was a couple years ago when we were just JMP. We were purchased by a capital company. It was called Crestview. And then Crestview bought some other businesses and created an umbrella group called Convergex. So Convergex has JMP, Classic Automation from the States, Eagle Automation from the States, and AGR, which is actually over in Europe. So as of Christmas last year, we've all been rebranded to Convergex. So in the what was JMP Convergex, there's sort of two branches. There's what we call the INES, your Integration and Engineering Group, which is strictly sort of controls houses. They aren't building machines, but they are contracted out. There's divisions all across North America. They'll get into, pharmaceutical, petrochemical, automotive, any sector we have people in. But the branch that I'm at, which is in London, Ontario, is what we call the automation branch. So we're the only branch that actually builds machines. We have a sister branch in Arkansas. They'll build machines in Arkansas, but essentially mostly engineering is done here in London.
Right.
So within that automation branch, our main areas are food and beverage and consumer packaging. There's sort of a sub branch that's getting into AGRs or your AGVs and developing top modules to go on top of those. So some of our biggest customers in like the food and beverage are your Tyson Foods, Cargill Foods, Kraft Foods, doing stuff for Hershey's. But then on the consumer packaging side, Kimberly Clark is a huge customer of ours, also doing stuff for Procter and Gamble and things like that. So that sort of gives you an idea. Convergex as a whole can be in every sector, but yeah, our automation and sort of silo, I guess, is mainly the food and beverage consumer packaging.
And when you talk about CPGs, consumer packaging, you are doing everything from start to finish. So full lines.
Pretty much, yeah. We'll do case packing. We'll work with usually third parties for case erecting. We have done some case erecting ourselves. So one of our sort of specialty cells that we do a lot is a case packer for Kimberly Clark. That is typically packaging bags of wipes or bags of diapers into boxes. So it's doing it with ABB robots and their pickmaster. So you're picking and placing on the fly. But then we'll go through your case sealing, check weighing, metal detecting, all the way to palletizing. So we'll use robots to automatically palletize and then through a third party wrapper and then out the door.
Right. Yeah. You explained that process really well, Laurie. That's exactly how it works, right? You've been at Convergex for JMP, now Convergex for 6 years. What's the most interesting project you've worked on so far, or aspect of a project, not necessarily the whole
Mm.
project, but what was the most
Oh,
challenging one, I guess, would probably be a good way of putting it.
a good one. I'm going to touch on a couple different ones. The one I always talk about was the Hershey's peanut butter cup one.
Yeah,
We had to visually inspect all of your Hershey's peanut butter cups, A, to make sure they were the right thickness. So we were using laser sensors for all of those. If it was not the right thickness, robotically picking them and rejecting them. And then we were also using vision to inspect them to see if there was any deformities and defects. And again, automatically rejecting the defects at a very, very high speed. So that one was just really cool because we got so much test product that we had Reese's peanut butter
uh,
cups to eat forever. So I was talking about that one. Other ones, we've done a couple sandwich lines for Cargill Foods. So we're robotically making sandwiches.
that's cool.
So sometimes, like the first one, the buns are slightly frozen and they go through a bowl feeder and come out, and then they go through a slicer. And we take the top of the bun off and separate it from the bottom of the bun, but they're traveling down a conveyor. Then we robotically pick your frozen patty of meat, depending if it's turkey, beef, whatever, place it on the bottom bun. There is sometimes we'll do breakfast sandwiches, so you have to pick the frozen egg and put it on. And again, this is all going high speed. Then it goes past a cheese slicer and it puts a piece of cheese on it. And then again, with vision and robots, we're picking the top of the bun up and putting it on the bottom of the sandwich, goes through a last visual inspection and then into your flow wrapper. I don't remember the speeds of it, but I'm still blown away. I'm like, who is eating this many sandwiches in a day? I don't know.
Right.
It's crazy fast.
I've never thought to myself when I bought a sandwich from, one of the service stations on the road, because usually when I buy one is when I'm just stopping to get gas and just on the road again. I've never thought to myself, I wonder if this was automated, because I've always assumed that it was made by someone and put in the packet, right? So, but
It
now I'm going to have to look at it and say, oh, maybe this was automated.
was automated,
Yeah.
exactly. And then there's a third one. It was more recent. I'm gonna say a year or two ago, I did another cargo one, but it was palletizing boxes of frozen meat, which doesn't seem too challenging, but just the mass size of it. So we had to do 8 lanes. Each one had a robot with tons of pallet conveyance. So it was quite large. Colin knows the size of our facility. It took up half of our shop. So electrically, that was a lot of panels, a lot of wiring, but definitely proud of how that one turned out and how my design turned out. Tried to make it very modular, And so, yeah, it was able to go together quite well. And then because I made it modular and the customer decided, oh, we're only going to install half and we're going to wait to install the other half. I'm like, that's okay because the way I designed it, that's not an issue. So yeah, I was proud of how that one turned out and came in under hours and under budget. So yeah.
I guess that would be in a IP69K environment, right? With food.
That one wasn't. Usually by the time it's in the case, it's in the box,
Right.
you're not touching food, so we can
Right.
just do IP67.
And the IP67 IO was the reason you were able to make it modular, right?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. So you can put an IP67 IO module. It's funny because I've been writing a lot about this lately, is the difference between IP67 distributed IO versus centralized panels with obviously IP20 IO, and how much versatility that gives you to be flexible and modular like you've just spoken about. And it really does, because you can group your IO into sections on a modular part of your line, okay, and ship that complete, ready to go. And all you need to do is plug power and Ethernet or Profinet, whichever flavor of communication you want. And then it's all back to the PLC. You could even have all the code written in the PLC, so that's actually ready to accept it when it's there. Just bring it back online.
Yep.
So
Yep. That's
it's
exactly what we do. I know, Colin, you've done a couple articles on decentralizing, and yeah, that's my big push right now. We do decentralize a lot of our I/O with the field I/O blocks, but you got Mer also has the field-mounted Ethernet switches, so we
yeah.
can decentralize that as well, so you don't have to run all these Ethernet cables back to the main panel. The next one I want us to do for a large palletizer, like I was talking, instead of putting all the VFDs in the panel, put them all out in the field and distribute those. So then my panel size gets a lot smaller. It's not a new thing. That technology is out there. GM, when I was doing GM work, they use it all the time. Just we haven't done it yet for any of these palletizers. So I'm keen to implement that on our next one.
Yeah, and I think some of the motor drive manufacturers like SEW are starting to give you a bit more choice on those IP67 combination drive motor units, right?
Yeah.
And again, decentralize that. I think there is a trend, certainly in Europe, to start moving away from pneumatic into electric actuators, and 48 volt in particular. We're way behind here in North America. You hardly see any applications with 48 volt motors on, but I can see that starting to come into North America in the next 5 years, and essentially replacing pneumatics as a way to move things.
Yeah, we're starting to implement some, let's say, smaller servo motors. You can get some small servo motors fairly cost effective. So especially when we're doing these AGR top module, you
Right.
need something small and compact. There's 48 volts already on the AGV.
Yeah.
So that's sort of where I'm seeing us start to use them. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we start to use them more on our other
Yeah,
machines.
there might be a small lift table or something like that on it,
Hmm.
right? Which
Yeah.
traditionally would have been two pneumatic or maybe even four pneumatic cylinders, pushing that up at the same time. But yeah, motors are coming down in price as well. So obviously, the more motors that are made, the more cost effective they come. All right. So thank you for giving us that overview of what Convergex does, and excites you every day to keep going in the industry there. And I'm interested to see some of your upcoming projects. And now, as we've already mentioned, previous meeting we've had, that the SIP safety will be part of that decentralized
Yes, I'm very
organization.
excited for that.
Yeah. And there's a couple of other products coming out from Euro Electronics soon that will also help you on that network side of things, of decentralizing that, and devices. Okay. So, and also power, because we've got some Miko 67. So for listeners that don't know what a Miko is, it's an electronic circuit protection that usually sits inside the panel instead of a circuit breaker or a fuse. We're now making an IP67 version of that, so you can distribute power on your machine with an IP67 module that gives you the same protection as you would get inside the panel with a circuit breaker.
Yeah.
And there's going to be IO Link version of that as well, so you'll be able to get feedback from that device and check for overloads, switch it on and off remotely as well. So it's going to open up a new way of basically powering all your modules out on the machine. And
Yeah.
IP67 power supplies too, that's another one. So So
Yep.
right now, I know there's this tariff thing going on. I'm trying to stay off the politics. I don't want to really bring politics onto the show. What would you say was the biggest challenge for the automation industry when it relates to your business at Convergex?
With regards to tariffs or just in
Um,
general?
Tariffs is obviously one. Let's just park that one for a minute. But let's say everything was still normal and there was no tariffs on the table. What do you think the biggest challenge is for the automation industry right now?
Unfortunately, it's going to come back to tariffs anyways, in politics, a lot of our projects are based on companies having capital to spend money on projects. And then those companies are hesitant to spend that capital based on what the market is currently doing. So when companies pull back their spending, then it delays projects or puts projects on hold, which sort of disrupts our workflow. So it's a matter of trying to diversify, trying to find any preventative maintenance work we can do, go back to previous customers, turning over every rock to try and find work to keep us busy until sort of things settle down and then people are comfortable getting those projects going again. I know we're not the only ones seeing that. I think a lot of companies are feeling that right now. There's just some uncertainty, so some people are or companies are hesitant to release that capital.
I couldn't agree with you more. And it's the turbulence, right? It's the constant on again, off again, uncertainty that's happening on the political side of things, not on our business side of things. Everything was going, pretty good. Maybe a little bit of slowdown this past year, but it was kind of a recovery time, I guess, post COVID because it was crazy
Yeah.
then. But you're absolutely right. It's the political climate and what's happening, especially in North America right now, is causing a lot of projects to be delayed. And some of the conversations I've had, I have quite a lot of conversations with machine builders around North America, is the same answers that they are quoting like crazy for projects. Like their quote books are so full. They've never had so many quotes on the book, and no one is placing the orders. They're holding back and holding back. And on the flip side, the service side of the business is booming because the service people are keeping those old machines going no matter what because the capital
Yep.
is not being released, right? So spare parts and services through the roof.
Yep.
You know, the new project side is just slowed down. And yeah, it is becoming a problem everywhere, Laurie. It's not just Convergex, everywhere struggling with it. Every industry, in fact, not just, the automotive industry has always been a big driver in North America. Food and beverage is, considered recession proof, right?
Yeah.
But it's still, even those industries like food and beverage and pharmaceutical, which are considered recession proof, are holding back
Yep.
because of the political turbulence, right? So hopefully it'll all be over soon, and it's not looking good right now for next week, but hopefully it'll all be gone soon.
If anything, I see sort of there was COVID, there was a bit of pullback during COVID, then things started ramping up again. Then there was a bit of pullback during the US election. And looking into 2025, it was like, oh my goodness, 2025 is going to be insane because everyone was holding back and hoping they were going to release everything. And that hasn't happened. At some point, these projects will need to get done. And at some point, there's going to be a huge mountain of projects out there, is my guess. When that happens, I don't know. But yeah.
Yeah, and then there'll be a challenge with manpower because there'll be so
Oh,
many
for sure.
projects, right? That is one of the challenges out there right now is finding skilled labor, not just at the machine building side, but also the manufacturing side is uh, that's what I keep hearing everywhere is we need more controls people, we need more millwrights, we need more whatever skill, programmers is short demand everywhere, and I can only imagine
Everywhere.
it's going to escalate once all those projects are released. So hopefully
Yeah.
it will be a bit of a slower pace, but a gradual ramp up instead of a rocket type trajectory, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
all right.
No,
So
I'd say, yeah, I'd say Convergex has the same sort of take on it is a struggle getting good experienced workers into the industry. We have hired people out of school, but there's a big ramp up period for them in order to get the experience. So in order to find someone out there with the experience able to hit the ground running, it's pretty tough right now.
So is Convergix actively working at the high school level, trying to present a career in automation as an option, at the age where it's pivotal, they're starting to choose their classes and the type of direction they're going to go in the future. Is Convergix out there trying to, pivot them towards automation a little bit and get some skilled, well, they wouldn't be skilled at people interested.
get get people interested. I think they've done a little bit in the high school in the way of robot wars and robot challenges.
Yeah.
So we'll support different robot teams. We definitely do get involved at the university level, doing speaking engagements. We've brought students in for a tour. We do have internships of students from usually universities spend some, depending on their term, for 8 months, which is it's huge. I went through co-op myself. It helps you gain experience, but also helps you realize, do I actually like this? Is this the path, the field that I want to go down? If not, you've got the next co-op to try something different. So I would highly promote any co-op program that lets you gain that experience. And it's great for the employer too. Obviously, you're helping out on a project, but then it lets them see, well, do I want to hire this person as a full time? Or, yeah, they're super good. We need to scoop them up before anyone else does.
Mir Electronic have been doing that for many, many years, and we still have so many employees in Germany that started off as co-ops.
Mhm.
They started off with co-ops, and some people have been with us for 20 years and started off as a co-op. So it is a good way to, first of all, identify talent, okay, or identify maybe not talent, but the right attitudes.
Yeah.
You might have people on co-op, they might all not be equal at a skill level, but their personalities and their determination, just the way that they operate within the day when they're being watched, when they're not being watched, right? Because, younger people tend to react a little bit differently when they know they're being watched as opposed to not being watched. And I think we all do, to be honest, not just young people. But it gives, the employers a chance to see those ones that are really, outstanding in everything that they do and give them a chance. And I think it's a really good way to get more young people into our industry and start filling those positions. I think there is one way we could probably increase that, and you mentioned it right at the beginning of this show, is what got you into the industry is if we bring shop back into the high school.
Yeah, they have, at least in some schools. My daughter's just in grade 9 this year, and they did bring de-streaming back. So she is getting it's not full, like, I had to try every shop, but essentially, I think they have to have one tech course in order to graduate from grade 9, but it's nice to see them at least implementing that and make some strides to at least expose them to have the option to try a shop.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? If we look back, it was a turning point for a lot of young people because when you go through an academic system and everything's academic, and they may not be academically minded, but they're more practical minded. And so they might have been struggling in school until they got to shop. And then at shop, they're turning their hands, they're making things. And if I remember shop, there were always these kids that made amazing things when we were all making the same project, right? You all had the same project, but there were
Mhm.
these kids that were always doing something absolutely amazing and they were so practical. And at that point in time, they might feel some self-worth and some value in themselves to think, I'm really good at something, I'm going to pursue this. And I don't think kids these days get enough opportunity to do that in the academic system or academia that we have. It's
Mhm.
focused towards getting your qualifications to be able to get into university, and there's been this big focus on that, and kind of moved away from looking at skilled as an acceptable or a cherished job. It's always been pushed down. Well, that's No, you don't want to do that. You know, you got to go to university and do something, be a lawyer, be a doctor, you know, and I think it's a lot to do with our parenting and the culture we live in these days that we are short of skilled labor, although there are probably hundreds of thousands of kids out there that would eagerly jump into it if they were given the chance.
Yep.
All
Yeah,
right.
totally agree. Yeah.
All right. So you are leader of the electrical group at Convergex. And so I always like to get a little bit of a leadership philosophy on here. What type of philosophy do you have on leadership and how do you build and maintain your team? What keeps them working for Convergex and interested, other than the work they're doing? What do you do as a leader to try and encourage them?
My style of leading is I'm still a member of the team. I'm not a higher level than anybody. I'm a team player as well. But essentially, I am the means of if you need answers, I'll go get them. If you need something to finish your job, then I'll get it for you, kind of thing. So that's sort of one thing is not being sort of a dictator. We also try, if it's a huge job, like let's parse it out and everyone take a bit. And so it gives a bit of we're collaborating together, we're working as a team, or if I'm away on holidays, someone else needs to cover for me. So I get them up to speed on all my projects. And then I do the same for someone else when they go on holidays. And then also, we try and do little things outside of work, have the guys over for a barbecue, things like that that are non-work related, just to sort of make that connection even more. I'd say some of the best leaders I have aren't necessarily, let's say, the most experienced in design, but they get to know you personally and they'll ask you a question about what's going on in your personal life and they're comfortable about sharing the job experiences or even personal experiences with you. So those are the best leaders for me. And then I try and emulate that to my group.
Yeah, I think that's a really good definition of leadership there. And the biggest thing I got from that was that you're not scared to get your hands dirty with everybody else. So, you know, if you have to pick up a
Yeah.
broom to finish off the job and stay there until it's finished, you'll do it. And the getting your people out of the work mode sometimes so they get to know each other a little bit out of the office. I've seen that have great effects with teams in the past. You know, and I think it's something that most companies do try to do is arrange things
Yeah.
that would get people out. You know, activities is the word I was looking for. Get them out of the work environment into a personal kind of team thing. So barbecues are a good, you know, bowling, those kind of aspects. I know we do that at Mirror Electronic quite a lot. So it gets people to know each other outside of work, and it's very healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree.
So, a little bit of fun and reflective kind of questions here. And this is kind of related to what we've just been talking about. And I'm going to put it on a platter for you here. So, if you could give your younger self one piece of advice that you'd wish you'd had when you started, what would that be?
I wish, believe it or not, so I did have three co-ops. I did two in DoD, one at Keltor. I wish I had done one at like a panel shop or something, or like with an electrician. I can wire troubleshoot. I'm just not very neat or good at it. And obviously, we do have electricians who will do it, but just to be a little more efficient at it, I wish I had or maybe even gone and got my electrical ticket. Yeah, I wish I'd just done a bit more hands-on wiring, I guess, rather than just in the field troubleshoot, debug. Usually it's pretty messy. You're pulling wires. Oh, these two are the ones we need. Let's land them. Will the electrician clean that up later? So yeah, that's one thing I wish I had done.
Yeah, that's something that's you know going away really. Well, eventually it will. I just wrote an article about Cube 67. You're familiar with Cube 67, and I basically compared it. Why are we still building control panels like it's 1965? with every sensor being wired back to terminal blocks inside the panel, where you need that skilled labor to wire it up. And, using M12 or M8 connectors on an IP67 module, you could train someone, within 15 minutes to do that, especially if they're identified with labels on the cables, labels on the ports, very quick to do it.
Mhm.
So in some ways, getting that experience would have been great, but it's somewhat going to be redundant in the future, I think. I don't know when, but at some point in the future, we will be decentralized and have no panels, no electrical panels.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I always say, because I am pushing for that decentralized solution as much as I can, but then I'm like, oh my God, I'm designing myself out of a job if I don't have panels to design. But all that I'll have to do is essentially draw connections to a block and draw your network and be done. But in the end, it'll be more efficient. It'll be a slicker design. We'll be able to crank out projects that much quicker.
Laurie, you'll never be out of work. There'll always be aspects of electrical systems to design. There'll always be new technologies coming out that you have to learn and integrate into machines. So your job is safe. AI is not at a place where it could replace you at this point in time.
Well, not yet, but it's starting to you see it starting to come into the industry for
Yeah.
sure. Like we use it for vision systems already, but like on the electrical design, we use ePlan for creating our electrical drawings, which has increased our efficiency immensely. But yeah, if we're doing the decentralized, it won't be that long where we'll be able to use AI to say, hey, I've got this, generate a drawing package for me, and it should spit something out that's pretty close. That'll be here sooner than later. So yeah, it'll be work to get there, and I'm keen to do that work and sort of figure out how we can get that going.
I think you're absolutely right. There are AI programs out there that can check ladder logic to make sure everything is function, no mistakes. C++ code, it can write code nearly as effectively as a human now, especially if it's got good examples to start from. So as you start building out those projects and feeding that information into an AI system, and it's basically learning from how you do things now, it can iterate new versions from the existing very effectively. And I think the pace of AI is incredibly infuriating, one, because I can hardly keep up. It's the first time in my life I cannot keep up with the technology because something new comes out every single day. It's crazy how fast even language models like OpenAI are growing and expanding and getting improved every single day. Because you think of ChatGPT from 2, 3 years ago when it first came out, where it is now, it's incredible. It's got a lot better, and that's just one language model. There's a lot of them out there, and then now you're going to get those specifically tailored towards applications like controls or programming, and they're going to be created from language models that are definitively accurate to your type of business and your type of components and your type of mechanisms, right? That will be able to do the design. So yes, AI will be able to assist you, okay, but there'll always be someone that needs to check that, right,
Okay.
and guide it.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's the way I look at AI. AI is an amazing assistant. It's just really good at everything. It's like having multiple assistants around. But you know what? And my analogy is the hole in the drill. Okay, when you want to put a hole in a wall, you've got an electric drill and you've got a drill bit. Okay, that's the tool. That's the AI. But without you directing the drill and holding the drill and pressing that button and then positioning it on the wall somewhere where you want to put the hole, it doesn't drill a hole, right? And it doesn't know how deep you want it either. So there's the human aspect there that will always be involved in AI, just like it has in automation. Because in automation, we've had that fear, oh, it's going to replace our jobs and robots are going to take away that job. But what happens is people get an opportunity to do something more interesting and maybe something less monotonous,
Hmm.
and their lives improve. It's in a way when we're automating things, we are making other people's lives better, right? They get to go and do things that were really boring jobs. And it's funny you were talking about the samples with the Hershey peanut cups, because one of my early vision system projects was with a brewery called Steam Whistle, which is a smaller brewery here in Canada. But they had a shift where everyone had to sit on a stool and watch the beer bottles go by a white screen, a backlit screen.
Hmm.
And at this point, the beer bottles were full. So if their bottle cleaner had missed a cigarette butt or saran wrap or something that was in the bottle back then, that bottle would have to get pulled off the line. Everyone in the company, and they weren't that big a company at that time, probably around about 50 employees at the most, had to do 20 minutes shift on that stool, including the CEO, right? And I saw this on a walkabout for a breakfast TV show. Um, on City TV. You probably remember City TV back then doing the
Yep.
walkabouts. And I went down there the next day and I said, I think I've got a solution for you that will stop you from sitting in front of that white screen. And they jumped on it and go, what? He said, it's a vision system. And they went all sad and heads went down and go, we don't have the money. We don't have the 300 or $400,000 it takes to do a bottle inspection system. I said, no, I've got an idea. We can do it for, I think, about $15,000. Didn't believe me. And I was working for Armron at the time. And I said, you know what? If you want to give me some samples of your worst bottles, we'll go away and do some testing. And we'll make sure that we can detect close to 100% as possible. And 100% was impossible at that point in time. But as close to 100% as possible. And more importantly, we'll do it before you put any beer in there and waste it. So they gave me all these different bottle samples with different defects, and some of them have been sitting in a ditch on the side for like a year, and so they get this thing called ditch rot on the side of the bottles. And they also gave me a whole bunch of full bottles. So, and
Nice.
I had to go back there and show, proof of concept, and we would do demonstrations. And every time I went out, they said, "Hey, here's a case of beer." So that was a really nice period of time where I was getting free beer. But I got fed up with Steam Whistle in the end. All right, so Laurie, this has been a really fun time chatting to you, and it's actually because we've known each other for quite some time. It's fun. It's fun to actually have a one-on-one like this and just talk about our industry and the things we do, share some stories as well. So, talking about ChatGPT and AI, and it doesn't have to be AI. What is one tool or one thing that in your work life you could not live without?
I mentioned it earlier. We use ePlan for our drawing generation. Prior to coming to JMP, I had used ePlan for just GM drawings. General Motors standardizes on using ePlan. But then pretty much everything else, I used AutoCAD, just straight AutoCAD or AutoCAD Electrical. But doing those drawings for GM, you saw how powerful it could be, how quickly you can make drawings. And it didn't matter what designer, where in the country, you were spitting out drawings that were the same. So when I went to JMP, they allowed me to do an evaluation of Works Electrical, AutoCAD Electrical, and ePlan. So I spent some time on all of them, pros, cons, and that sort of thing. And so essentially, I convinced them that we should switch to ePlan. So we did we already had a couple licenses just for doing GM drawings, but bought a specific license, let's say just for automation. I'd done a payback analysis thinking, because it's a fairly expensive license to buy, it might take us 2 years in order to pay it back. Well, we were easily able to pay it back in 1 year. So now we've grown. We've got 3 or 4 licenses just at our branch, as well as licenses at other branches. And now, when I have to go back and edit or change or even do a set, because sometimes I have to do a set just in AutoCAD due to legacy, it is so painful. So painful. Just the speed and efficiency and accuracy is light years different. So I cannot live without my ePlan now.
There's a plug for ePlan.
I know.
I'll have to let Roland know about that. So I'll have
I'll
to
so
send
I'm
him a link to say, listen to this E-Plan has mentioned. You know Roland, right?
I know Roland. I'm going back over to Hanover for next week, and the E-Plan booth will be there. So I'm sure Roland will be there.
Oh, okay. You'll have to give him a good plug while you're there.
Yeah,
No.
yeah.
All right. So wrapping up here, I got a couple more questions to ask you, but one that I ask every guest is if you weren't in automation and you didn't go in that direction, what do you think you would be doing now?
As I alluded to earlier, I physical fitness, the human body is fascinating to me. So, and I applied to go down kinesiology. So, I guess is I might have done something down that route, whether it's physiotherapy or something like that. I'm
Is
guessing,
it like a
and especially since having my accident and looking at X-rays and going through rehab, it gives you even a more appreciation on how amazing the human body is, how it adapts, how it recovers. So yeah, it definitely fascinates me.
Yeah, and the human body is such an incredible machine when you think about it. I mean, we're in
Yeah.
autumn, and we so often try to emulate the human functions, right, in automation. And
So when we're grabbing and doing all this food handling, the grippers that we're getting is actually trying to simulate human hands, right?
yeah,
So yeah,
even the
it's pretty
movement,
incredible.
even sorry to interrupt, even the shortest movement for the robot, right? Because old
Yeah,
days robots would be very mechanical, move like that, and now is how can we go the shortest distance, to increase the throughput,
yeah.
right? It's quite interesting how far we've come, and I think we've both been in the industry for nearly as long as you. I maybe a little bit more longer than you, but.
Again, I started when I was 3.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So about the same amount of time then. All right. Laurie, again, I can't tell you how good this has been to have you on the show. I'm really enjoying this. So I need you to recommend someone else to come on the show. It's one of the things I ask every guest is, can you please give me a referral for someone that you think would bring value to our listeners and would be worthwhile listening to?
I'm going to invite, his name is Steve Craig. So he was a coworker of mine at D&D for quite some time. We still stay in touch. He then essentially started his own smaller, or there's a group of people from D&D started their own smaller controls company called Ibex. And I think he would be a good person to have on the show. Obviously, me coming from a company that's now been bought in by a capital group and is larger, compare his take from a smaller local controls group. Does he see anything different in the industry? Obviously, they're servicing more local companies, and like, do they have any concerns about sort of the longevity of a smaller company like them as more and more of these controls companies like well, D&D was purchased by Eclipse, but then Eclipse was purchased by Accenture. What was the other one in Kitchener? That was purchased by Samuel.
Right.
So, uh, yeah,
Yeah.
it's like your smaller businesses are more rare now. So I would be curious if you had a conversation with Steve, sort of what he sees in the way of the longevity and future of smaller controls companies.
Yeah, that would be a great conversation being controls person, and I would love to have that conversation. Thank you for the suggestion, and I will actually ask you to put me in touch with Steve. So
Yeah, for
um,
sure.
appreciate that. All right, so Laurie, it's been a great show. I really appreciate having you on. Where can listeners find you? Online? Where's the best place for them to find you?
I am on LinkedIn. Just search up Laurie Russell. That's the best place to get a hold of me.
All right. And I'm going to sign off by saying, how many baseball games have you got lined up? I guess that season's going to start soon. You're probably finishing off hockey right now.
Finishing off hockey, both my kids played competitive hockey. Mind you, we're going into a bit of spring hockey and then into tryouts, so really it's not done until mid-May. But then both my kids are into soccer, and I'm
That's
the
right.
only baseball player. So between soccer and baseball, we will be outside at the fields pretty much every day of the week.
Active family, right?
Yeah, wouldn't have it any other way.
No. Laurie, thank you ever so much for joining me here. I look forward to seeing you. I will actually be coming out to see you probably in the next week or two. I've got some new things to show you, so I look forward to sitting down with you and showing you some of those. But thanks for joining me.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
And that's a wrap for today's show, so thanks for tuning in to Machine Builder Talk. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to click subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you really like listening, a quick review goes a long way to help more machine builders and automation pros like you find the show. Until next time, stay curious, stay connected, and keep building.